Hi, I am Nicole Everett, and I will be serving as your moderator today. And I am super excited and delighted to be here with you. We ask that you please put your comments and questions in the chat. Today's forum is going to be between City Commissioner Jeremy Matlow and Dr. David Bellamy. So we are again, excited to have them both here with us today. A little bit about me, from Miami, Florida originally, came to Tallahassee to attend the Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University. In the late 80s, graduated from the School of Business and Industry, worked in affordable housing for about 20 years, and started Conversations with Nicole, my talk show back in 2016. Co-launched a network with my partner Gerald Tooks in 2020 called Greater Works Network, which is on Roku TV. And my show can be seen on Roku as well as on Facebook and YouTube. And some of the organizations that I am involved with are Big Bend Habitat for Humanity, Working Class Wednesday, Leadership Tallahassee, as well as the Providence Neighborhood Association. And so I have decided to get involved with this particular forum because I have not had a conversation with both of the candidates, and I thought it'd be a great way to get to know them a little better. I did serve on the City Code Enforcement Board with Commissioner Matlow. So I know him a little bit, but again, just excited to learn more about both of the candidates and get their perspective on some things. So today is a little cloudy out, and so I just want to give a warning that if we, for some reason, lose our connection from Zoom, we will record it and it will be available to view in the future. So just want to let you know if we, for some reason, lose our connection, that it will be recorded and made available to on the Leon Dems Facebook page and the Leon County Democratic Party YouTube channel. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed that does not happen. So we have got a packed agenda today. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's please keep this forum cordial and respectful. And we will allow for 2 minutes introductory comments from the candidates. So we will go in alphabetical order by last name. So up first will be Dr. Bellamy, and then following him, Commissioner Matlow. So Dr. Bellamy, you have 2 minutes, and then Commissioner Matlow, you will be up next. Thank you, candidates.
Well, thanks. Thanks for hosting this. Call me David. Thanks for doing this, Nicole. My great-grandfather came here in 1918 to start the School of Sociology at FSU, and we've been here ever since. My mother was the mayor in the 80s. I started my public service to the city when my mom took me to a Police Explorer meeting when I was 14. I stayed in serving the city as a police officer, worked mainly from 90 to 97. Once I graduated med school in 97, I became an orthopedic surgeon, and I've been here since 2002 serving the city as a doctor. I love this city, but as I drive through the areas where I was a police officer, it looks like things have utterly stood still. It's as if you're stepping into a time machine and going back 30 years. Keith Street still has the same potholes, the same empty lots that have trails through them, the same boarded up houses. The first shooting I handled was at 1010 Basin Street. Well, there's been 4 shootings at 1010 Basin Street in the past several months with 2 deaths. Things are not changing. And I got fed up with it. I started seeing more and more how abject poverty is affecting so many of our citizens. I'm the chairman of the board at John Paul II High School, and we've got several children that come to our school from the Bond area. And to see them come to school unable to afford clothes, unable to go to the laundromat enough to clean them, to see them not have transportation to get to school, and to hear some of them talk about how they need to take their siblings to the back rooms when they hear gunshots too close. And knowing that's just a mile away from the capital is unacceptable. I voted for who I thought would fix that, and I've been disappointed, and I decided to run myself. I think that in order for us to fix this, we have to have somebody that is willing to focus on the quality of life for our impoverished, our underserved areas, and look at it as if it's their only reason on the commission until we get some sort of parity. One thing we've got to do to get there is we've got to find a way to be better leaders, to get along with one another, to compromise, to work out agreements. I still have a patient a year that'll come tell me how they had gone and met with my mother while she was mayor, got nothing that they wanted out of the meeting, but they left the meeting liking her, respecting her, and willing to work with her again. And we have got to get back to that if we want any hope of not turning our city into a miniature Washington, D.C., where nothing can get done. My mother and Hurley Rudd had a love-hate relationship, and sometimes I wonder if it was a little bit more hate than love. But when Hurley needed his knees replaced, he came to my father, because that's how people got along back then. And we've got to get back to that. I want to see our impoverished areas thrive like the rest of our city. And I got tired of seeing nothing getting done. And if anything, getting worse.
Thank you, David. Commissioner Matlow?
Hey, thank you. And thank you, Democrats, for hosting this today. This is a very important election year for all of us. Dr. Bellamy mentioned a lot of great points about things that need to be addressed. Poverty, Southside infrastructure, we've been talking about those and pushing for those ever since I was elected to the city commission. But I think it's important to understand this election matters. It matters so much because the values that Democrats hold are under attack. They're under attack by our governor. He's going after our schools. He's going after the LGBTQ community. The Supreme Court's attacking a woman's right to choose. So when we look at Tallahassee, we're different than the rest of Florida. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the values that we represent and what our community values right here in Tallahassee. But what we've seen over the last decade is a lot of the time city commission decisions don't really line up with our community's values, right? A lot of us went to City Hall for neighborhood issues. It fell on deaf ears. It just sounded like the developers had a fast track to do really whatever they wanted. I went to City Hall with problems that were facing small businesses. Again, it fell on deaf ears. So it was no surprise for a lot of us to see when federal indictments and arrests started rolling in our city, because our city hadn't been working for us. It hadn't been working for you. It hadn't been working for your neighborhoods. And it hadn't really been working for the people that wanted to see Tallahassee become a better place. That's why I ran for office 4 years ago. And we made tremendous progress pushing for the types of reforms that we need to see. But clearly, there's still so much work that needs to be done. It's not the time to change leadership. It's not the time to switch to a right-wing agenda. It's the time to double down and do what's right for our community. Stop the urban sprawl, protect our neighborhoods, invest in Southside, reduce poverty. We can do that when we all work together. Thank you.
Hold on. Sorry. Thank you, Commissioner Matlow. So as a reminder to our attendees, we will have some time to take audience questions at the end of the program. So for our viewers, please type your questions as you think of them in the chat. We have co-hosts who will be monitoring the questions as they come in. If you want to ask your questions live today, please use the raise hand function, which is found on the bottom of your screen in the reactions button. So push reactions and the option to raise your hand and it will come up. The co-host will prompt me and let me know who wants to ask questions live. I will call your name and you will be unmuted. We will get to as many of the audience questions as time permits. So it is now time for the Q&A portion of our program. As a reminder to the candidates, you will have 2 minutes to respond to each question, and I will be keeping time and will notify you when your time is up. So please respect the time limits. Please, please, please. It's okay to finish your comment in under 2 minutes. Please do not feel pressured to take every answer to the limit. I will begin alphabetically by first name and then rotate who goes first from there. So moving on to the Q&A. I want to just thank each of you for, again, being here, and let's go ahead and get started. So affordable housing is our first question. Again, I worked in the affordable housing arena, so this topic is near and dear to my heart. So David, you have stated several times that Commissioner Matlow voted against affordable housing 4 times. Please identify the 4 votes that you were referring to and explain why you say that each was a vote against affordable housing. In addition to building careers, tell us what actions will you take to achieve innovative solutions so that Tallahassee residents can find housing costing less than 30% of their income. And the reason why we say 30%, because 30% is that threshold for affordable housing. So if you would please respond.
Oh, you're muted.
The most recent one would be where there was a development proposed on the south side. We actually want people to build on the south side. We want housing on the south side. And some of that would have included affordable housing, and Jeremy disagreed with that. Right now, it is almost impossible to build affordable housing. If a person wants to build a house and gets a lot for $50,000 on the south side, then has to invest $60,000 in permitting and the placement of things such as the roads, the plumbing, the sewer, then spends 2 to 4 years getting it permitted. Now they've spent $110,000 and haven't even been able to break ground. Now you build the cheapest house you can, $140,000, you're looking at a $250,000 house. To afford the mortgage on a $250,000 house requires an income of $70,000. And that's if you don't have many other expenses. Right now in Tallahassee, the median income is about $25,000. So it's impossible to do it. I think one way we can look at doing that is having the city provide land, the city provide the placement of infrastructure, and the city provide the permitting. Then we can go to home builders and offer them the opportunity to build the way we want it built because we've permitted it, and do it at a fixed profit rate. I think that if we made it so that they could do it at a fixed profit rate with the permitting done, we could achieve houses that cost below $150,000. Now you're truly getting to affordable housing. The best way to fix affordable housing, though, is to give people more money, find them better careers. And I mean careers you can be proud of, careers that you like going to, careers that offer the opportunity for promotions, careers that offer the opportunity for pensions or 401ks with matching contributions, and jobs that you like going to. It's great that we have a mandatory $15 minimum wage, but working at an endless job at a big box store for $15 an hour only gets you $31,000 a year without any big hope for ever getting more. $15 an hour only equates to a $31,000 a year income. Our poverty level is rated at $21,000. And I would argue that 40,000 is probably a more realistic poverty level based on the Organization for Women's Health.
All right, that's your time.
Sorry.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Matlow, tell us what actions will you take to achieve innovative solutions so that Tallahassee residents can find housing costing less than 30% of their income?
Yeah, great question. And I just want to note, you asked for 4 votes and he pointed to 1, and that vote was not an affordable housing development. In fact, the developer said the housing, if we expanded the urban services area, which is going to funnel our taxes to that area, those houses would be in the low $300,000. That's not affordable. It's not affordable for most of our city. So what do we need to do? Yes, we need to look at doing things a little bit differently. And I think we start with using city-owned land. I've been an advocate against selling city-owned land below market value, maybe because we're not getting it appraised without a bid process. we have hundreds of acres of land that we can build housing on now. And as the city, we can control its destiny. We can make sure every home on that land is built where somebody can afford it with 30% of their income. And we also have to look at low income housing and very low income housing, because that's really the biggest risk we're seeing in our community right now as developers are coming in, buying it up and destroying it. So it's becoming even more expensive for people to live. When we look at the Housing Authority waiting list, when it opens up, tens of thousands of people apply because there's such a demand for that housing, and it's a successful model using public housing. So we should use the land we have now to expand our public housing stock, and then we could see how we can work with individual homeowners to provide land and grant opportunities so they can get into home ownership at a rate they can afford to. So we're doing a lot of things in Tallahassee to address this issue, but what we're seeing is the things we're doing aren't working enough to move the needle. We need to be more aggressive on affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next question is around poverty, crime, and mental health and illness. And mental health and illness is also something that is near and dear to me because I serve on the Mental Health Council of the Big Bend, and also am serving as a behavioral health navigator for the Department of Health. And so we must look at current situations which present a systemic problem. Poverty in Tallahassee is at 27.1%. 1 out of every 3.7 residents of Tallahassee live in poverty. The annual statistics for violent crimes is 7.82 per 1,000 residents, one of the highest rates in Florida. One of the many price individuals, particularly our youth, pay with their lives, which are affected by adverse circumstances and their emotional and mental health. For example, 1 in 5 kids experience a mental health condition and only 20% of them get help. 50% of ages 14 plus with mental health conditions will drop out of school. And suicide is the second leading cause of death for youth ages 10 to 24-year-olds. So, David, you've said a number of times that the answer to both poverty and crime is careers, that is jobs that pay more than minimum wage and have benefits. I'm sure we would love to see all of Tallahassee's low-income residents and at-risk youth launched into good-paying careers. But how do you propose we do that? And if you're talking about a long-term process, what do you propose to do in the meantime? And then as it relates to mental health, in some cases, mental illness, a big part of that picture is that of the youth. So what specifically do you want the city to do to better serve residents with mental health issues?
Well, the Office of Economic Vitality has got about 17 businesses that want to come to Tallahassee, and they want to put their businesses at places like Innovation Park that was made for that sort of thing. They want to put their businesses near the airport where we're not disrupting families and we're not cutting down oak trees. We're cutting down farmed pine trees. And we've got to work with those businesses that choose us in the end to come here. Many of those businesses will be in the very zip code that is the poorest zip code in the entire state. That's how we start working on providing good careers. In regards to mental health, that's tough. Rich people in Tallahassee can't get good mental health. You can imagine how people that are not rich can't get any at all. One thing that I would have liked to have seen if we saw we were going to lose the battle for the $27 million to FSU would have been some sort of agreement that when they start their psychiatry residency program in the next year or two and end up bringing probably 6 to 10 psychiatrists to town, that we demand that they set up their clinics in our underserved areas. A psychiatry clinic only needs an office and a receptionist. It would have been extremely easy to do, extremely cheap to do. And while I understand the boosters don't control the medical school, I'm sure a few calls could have been made. One of the problems with getting mental health care is not just the ability to afford it, but the ability to get to the clinic. So if we put those clinics in our underserved areas, I think we could have done a great job of helping our underserved people dealing with mental illness. We know that the cumulative stress of living in poverty, living around crime, changes you. It's like a constant state of post-traumatic stress disorder. Their blood pressure is higher, their cortisone levels are higher. And we don't do a lot to help with that because, again, they can't get to the doctor. And even if they could, they can't afford to see the doctor. So I think that focusing on delivering care that is needed in the area that's needed could go quite a far way in helping our mental health.
Okay, that's our time. Commissioner Matlow, as a city commissioner, what have you proposed and been able to accomplish to deal with poverty, crime, and mental health and illness? And if after elected, you have the votes to do more, what will you propose then? What specifically do you want the city to do to better serve residents, particularly our youth with mental health and illness issues?
Sorry, something popped up there. So I'm going to work backwards from them on mental health. We worked with the commission to start the TEAMS program with the fire department, police department, and mental health counselors. So now we have dedicated individuals that are responding to mental health calls where previously maybe they were just getting responded to by a rank and file officer who wasn't necessarily trained to handle those types of situations. Crime's a constant issue because it is linked to poverty. So in the long term, that's what we're fighting against. But we have dedicated $1 million just this year to look towards new and creative programs, restorative justice programs, direct interaction programs, anything that can get on the streets and try to deter what's happening today. And poverty, I always say this because poverty isn't a vote you go to the city commission and you vote up or down if you want to see it. Every vote we take on the city commission is impacting people that lived in poverty. You know, I was raised by a single mother of 4 kids on the south side of the city, and I know the struggles of our public transportation. I know what it's like to go to bed hungry. I know what it's like to not have your utilities connected for weeks at a time. Those things really shape a person. But when we make decisions at the city commission level, if you don't have those experience, you don't know who you're harming when you make terrible decisions like giving $27 million to a football stadium. That is just absolutely absurd. $27 million could directly affect the lives and get people out of poverty in our community today. And it's across the board. It's our infrastructure investments. We're building an $80 million roadway, the Northeast Gateway, into Welaunee for neighborhoods that haven't even been built yet, while people living in poverty don't even have sidewalks to walk to school or work on. It's just ludicrous to think if you don't look at each decision you're making and how it affects people, you're never going to get ahead of the problem. So I propose creating a council just on poverty, as well as a dedicated resource for it. Unfortunately, those were rejected by the majority. Thank you.
All right. Thank you both for your comments. All right. David, this next question is around civility. You've said that voters should elect you in order to bring civility to the commission. But at commission meetings, Commissioner Matlow seems courteous, collegial, and reasonable. You've accused Commissioner Matlow of hypocrisy for publicly supporting trailer park tenants who were being evicted, but failing to object to the eviction of businesses from the Costco's shopping center, which you attribute to the evictor being a friend and supporter of Matlow. On what information are you basing your criticism of Commissioner Matlow?
I think that you can see behavior outside of the meeting sometimes that looks aggressive and not helpful in reaching a consensus. Releasing the city manager, and keep in mind, now the city manager has problems, but to release his review just to make waves on whatever it was, Twitter or Facebook, before it's released, that's not professional. That's jabbing at somebody. That's not being civil. That's not working with someone. We had a hostile workplace complaint that was deemed not hostile workplace, but it was deemed that by a company that was hired by the city to say whether the city was culpable or not exactly an impartial group. And they still said that Jeremy needs a moderator to go with him or a mediator to go with him to meet with Blueprint people again. I've never had somebody tell me I need a moderator with me to deal with another grown-up. We have got to get to where you can deal with people you disagree with in a productive manner. To vote against Curtis Richardson just out of spite, it doesn't matter how politely you do it. The act says all you need to know. Voting against Commissioner Richardson being the mayor pro tem out of spite is not working towards building a consensus where in the future you can go to Commissioner Richardson and say, I need help on this, you need help on that, let's work together. So I think there's several examples where he is not able to build a consensus through how he treats other people.
Okay. Commissioner Matlow, what do you know about the Costco Shopping Center? Do you have a friend or supporter involved? And what, if anything, do you do about the situation there? Also, do you see any way in which you might have contributed to incivility on the commission?
Yeah, thank you. And there have been some civility issues on the city commission. When Mayor John Daly didn't want to hear about lobbyist reform, he shut the meeting down and didn't let Commissioner Porter speak. When we were trying to bring transparency to Blueprint again, people were robbed of their voices and an opportunity to speak. I'm 100% for transparency. I think what David Bellamy's pointing to is he has issues with that type of transparency, and that's okay. It's just a differing of opinions. As far as the Costa Shopping Center, I think he's completely wrong. Not only was I a regular lunch customer of Costa's and talked with him after David Bellamy made that accusation, I was contacted by Adam Kay. He's the owner of Railroad Square, and yes, he's a donor of mine. And he said, I can't believe he said that. You were the only commissioner. You were the only elected official to reach out to me on behalf of those tenants and try to find resolution. And we worked and we tried to find other locations. And Adam did as well. Was it a great situation? No, it wasn't. But to try to apply to score cheap political points that I didn't do anything, I think, that's just out of control. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So I have a quick follow-up question for each candidate. David, where is the line between civility and expressing differences on the issues for you? And how would you, as a public servant, work through the differences among commissioners and bring forward solutions for the community that the commissioners would vote on at the commission meetings?
Well, civility is not avoiding saying the truth. It's not avoiding telling people when you think they're wrong. It's lack of civility is damaging relationships to the point where in the future they're not functional. You can disagree with somebody, but you can get along with them. You can come back around and say, what can we work together on? And that's the difference. Civility doesn't mean just sitting there going with the flow. It doesn't mean just voting with the majority. It means speaking your mind, but doing it in a way that doesn't leave a scorched earth, that doesn't burn bridges down. That's the difference.
Okay. Same question, Commissioner Matlow. Where is the line between civility and expressing differences on the issues? How would you, as a public servant, work through the differences in a civil manner among commissioners to bring forward solutions for the community that the commissioners would vote on at the commission meetings? I think you're muted.
Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so lack of civility to me, that's violence. That's direct personal attacks on someone or their character. We have seen some of those thrown around in our community. I find them to be quite unfortunate. But the truth is, while my city and county colleagues, we disagree on a lot of different issues, we still show up every 2 weeks and we get the job done for the people of Tallahassee. So every meeting we find things we agree on. Every meeting we find things we disagree on. And largely I think that point has just been blown out of proportion. But really, when we talk about working with everybody, the problem in our community right now is we're not working with everybody. Not everybody has a seat at the table. When 300 people in Killarn have a town hall opposed to the Northeast Gateway, they were given the runaround before even being able to contact their elected officials. We have to take people's ideas, thoughts, and concerns at the forefront, but instead we have the staff package something and force it through, and people are being told it's a done deal when it's not. So I'm always going to stand up for bringing everybody and every viewpoint to the commission. Unfortunately, we don't have that right now.
All right. Thank you both. Our next topic is around independent review of police conduct. And so we will start with Commissioner Matlow. In 2020, after 3 TPD killings of civilians and while Black Lives Matter demonstrations were being held across the country and in Tallahassee, the City Commission created a Citizens Police Review Board. The new board has no budget, no staff of its own, and no subpoena power. And the board members are required to be trained by the Tallahassee Police Department. What did you do to try to make the board stronger, if any? And after the election, you have the votes. How will you change the board?
Sure, thank you. And this was during a very controversial time over the last few years. It was in the height of the Black Lives Matter protests, and we were seeing some really shocking behavior in our community. We saw, 200 riot geared class officers storm North Monroe and arrest a bunch of protesters in orange safety vests. I think that was the moment when most of us realized there's a disconnect between our law enforcement in our city. And it comes from the top. It comes from where the orders are given, not to somebody individually doing their job. But that was the only solution that garnered enough votes during that crisis. So do I think there can be changes and more power and to strengthen what they're able to do? Yeah, I do think we can look at that. I think the board should put together their recommendations and bring them directly to the city for a vote. Because at the end of the day, when we have a strong citizens board that the people trust, it builds trust in our law enforcement agencies. It builds trust in our officers, and that's good for everybody in our community.
All right. Dr. Bellamy, do you believe that independent review of police conduct is needed? Do you think that the Citizens Police Review Board is adequate? And if you think the board should be changed, how would you change it?
So I think it's great to have independent review from citizens. Fantastic. I think that they probably do deserve a budget and at least a staff member, if nothing else, part-time, that can help arrange things and collect data. I think we've got to convince the police department that they need to be transparent as possible. I think we have got to, much to our state attorney's chagrin, release video of incidents that people are interested in as soon as we can, even if it does make it harder to find a jury. Everything does well in the sunlight. And if the video is going to come out, have it come out immediately before people can start trying to figure out what happened on their own. So I agree with the review board. I think it should have money and a staff member. And I think we need to focus on the city being as transparent as possible and releasing every bit of detail they're legally allowed to do as soon as they can.
Okay, thank you both. Next, we will move on to the topic of political donations. Dr. Bellamy, your political donations have a distinctly Republican tilt. You've donated to Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader for the U.S. House, to the Republican PAC, Take Back the House, to the Republican Party of Florida, to Kelly Stargo, to the Republican Senator from Lakeland, who sponsored the 15-week anti-abortion bill, to Neil Dunn, to DeSantis, to Matt Gaetz, to Jeb Bush, and other Republicans, at least 21 in all. You've also donated to 4 Democrats, Alan Boyd, who often voted with Republicans and supported the privatization of Social Security, Scott Maddox, Bill Mumford, and a Gainesville physician. But most of your money has gone to Republicans. You said you donated to Republicans because the Florida Medical Association told you that they were good for doctors. Do you believe these candidates' positions on issues are in line with the values of the Democratic Party? And what can you say to reassure Democratic Party voters?
So I contributed based on people that were supposed to be good for the delivery of medicine, who sided with doctors over insurance companies. When you have your MRI declined, it's not because a legislator for doctors supports that. It's because a legislator for insurance companies supports that. Find me one candidate that you agree with everything on. I can't find that. I grew up with Democratic icons of the nation, Bob Graham, Leroy Collins, Lawton Childs. I love that sort of leadership. I'd like to see more of that. I was ready to vote for Gwen Graham. Show me those kind of leaders, and I'd love to support them. No, I don't think that the Republicans have done everything I wanted, and the ones I donated to didn't demonstrate outlandish behavior that I knew of before I gave to them. So I will admit, most of it was because they were indicated to be good for the delivery of medicine. Many of them I would not have given to if I'd have known how they were going to act later on. but many times we are disappointed with who we support and vote for. I voted for my opponent. That's why I'm running now. It turned out to not be what I thought it was. The same with some of the Republicans I've donated to, and many of them I wouldn't give to again.
Okay. Commissioner Matlow, most of your political donations have gone to Democrats, including Val Demings for Senate, Andrew Gillum for governor, and the DNC, as well as a number of progressive Democrats in difficult races. You said that you never contributed to a Republican, but as Dr. Bellamy has pointed out, you did one time in 2012 give $20 to a Republican, John Shaw, who was running for Bill Montford's Senate seat. What can you tell us about that donation, and what can you tell Democratic voters about your other political donations?
Yeah, sure. So first off, thank you for the vote, Dr. Bellamy. I may have been the only Democrat who voted for in 2018, but I appreciate it. So yeah, I do owe Dr. Bellamy an apology. I said what he said was false about donating to a Republican, because frankly, it was $20 to a guy I went to high school with who was running a campaign on marijuana legalization and reform. So I gave him $20 to support him. But let's not cloud the record. 99.8% of my donations are probably to Democrats, mostly progressive Democrats. 75% of Dr. Bellamy's donations are to Republicans. We just come from different thought backgrounds, right? We have different values. When I look at what's good for the delivery of medicine, I look at Obamacare. I look at Medicare for all. The people he was donating to money wouldn't support those types of programs. So I'm proud of every donation I've made. We've elected a lot of great Democrats across the state and to the nation, and working together, we're going to elect a lot more.
Okay, thank you both. Now, this is the question I have been waiting for, the $20 million question. Doak Campbell Stadium. Dr. Bellamy, Commissioner Matlow, has criticized you for failing to prevent Blueprint from giving $20 million to FSU for the football stadium, or for not achieving a compromise for less money. What did you do to try to stop the Doak Campbell grant or reduce it? And do you see anything else you could have done that might have worked? How would you move forward to address the unaddressed and unfunded community needs? And does the community now have access to Doak Stadium for events and services? 2 minutes.
Yeah, first off, I mean, the great thing about democracy is every elected official has to vote their conscience. That's what I did on Doak when I voted no. But when we're unhappy with how our elected officials vote, that's what August and November are for. We bring it to the ballot box. That is a perfectly well-oiled, functioning democracy. When we look at Doak Campbell, it came out of nowhere, which was wholly inappropriate. It jumped the ship and got on the agenda with less than a week's notice of the public. We've never seen a major project come with so little notice to the public. That's part of the reason I've been trying to get more transparency at Blueprint. It's part of the reason I'm asking the IMC to meet in the sunshine, so we know how long in advance they were cooking up these schemes, right? So I tried, once it was clear that we didn't have the votes to reject it completely, which we should have, because the vast majority of our community was against it. You know, I did offer the compromise and voted with Brian Welch and I think 4 or 5 other commissioners. That was rejected by the majority, because it was never about compromise or trying to get to a lower dollar amount. It was just, we have the power. We don't care. We want to make our donors happy. I mean, that's why the mayor took $30,000 in political contributions just before the vote. That's why the same people are funneling money into David Bellamy's campaign right now. The idea that we're somehow going to change people's perspectives and how they vote if we have a different person, I mean, it's just not true. We need people who respect our community and their needs. What could $27 million have done? I started a small business with a $10,000 loan from the CRA, a government loan program. We now employ over 100 people. How many $10,000 loans? How many $50,000 grants could $20 million provide? What kind of impact could that have had really on our business community, our local businesses, and the people that live here? Thank you.
All right. Dr. Bellamy, you said that you would have voted against Blueprint's $20 million grant to FSU for the football stadium. Why did you not make a public statement opposing the grant prior to the initial vote or the final vote? And what makes you think you could have killed the giant or reduced it when Commissioner Matlow and so many others tried and failed? How would you move forward to address the unaddressed and unfunded community needs? And does the community now have access to Doak Campbell for events and services?
So first off, as far as back to donations real quick, I'd like it noted that I held a fundraiser for Alan Boyd after he voted for Obamacare, trying to keep him in office. I thought Obamacare had several great issues with it. I don't think anybody that voted for Blueprint thought money was going to go to the boosters. I think that somebody with better leadership skills could have worked out a compromise. I understand the first time it came up was a surprise, but it wasn't till the third vote we started seeing serious opposition. It should have started right after that first vote. If you want to get what you think your constituents deserve, you've got to be willing to communicate with people that maybe you don't like. Jeremy wouldn't call back the president of the boosters. You've got to communicate with those people. I think that at the time when it looked like it was maybe going to fail, it might have been a good time to call the booster and say, I will fight tooth and nail to make sure you get nothing, unless you change your request to 10 million, a compromise that most of the citizens seem to be willing to stomach. And if you'll do that, I'll stand on the steps and hold your hands and we'll announce it together. When you have got such a bad relationship with Blueprint that you need a mediator to help you communicate with them, it's hard to work out a compromise. They say they're going to give access to the community to Doak Campbell. That's great. That's not what I want. I want health care. I want better roads for our people that we're going to just give access to Doak Campbell for. Let's face it, it will never really be a community event spot for things other than football games. So I don't think we should have given the money. I think I could have worked out some sort of compromise using different negotiating tactics.
Okay, thank you both. All right, so this next set of questions will be our final before we go on to get questions from our viewers, and it's around municipal broadband. Dr. Bellamy, you said you voted for Commissioner Matlow in 2018 because you liked what he was saying. In 2018, one of Matlow's main campaign proposals was for the city of Tallahassee to create a city-run fiber optic high-speed internet service. After the election, the city commission voted for a feasibility study, but this was opposed by business and by city staff, and the commission reversed itself and voted not to obtain a study. Would you have supported a feasibility study of municipal broadband then, and would you support it now?
I think a feasibility study is always a great idea. I don't know if there's still time to do it now that MetroNet's all over the place, but certainly when we didn't have another option, a feasibility study is always a great idea as long as it's affordable.
Okay. Commissioner Matlow, since the commission voted down a municipal broadband study, a fiber optic company, MetroNet, which has already been mentioned, has entered the Tallahassee market. So do you still want to see a study of a city-owned fiber optic internet service?
Yeah, absolutely. As far as I know, MetroNet still isn't providing service to our lowest income neighborhoods. That was the whole point, closing the digital divide and using the resources we have to do so. And unfortunately, since that vote failed, we saw the problem on full display during COVID. You know, students who possibly fell through the cracks because they didn't have internet access. You know, people trying to figure out ways to just get people connected so their students can learn. That goes back to every decision you make affects people who are living in poverty. To reject a study. And why was the study rejected? Because the Chamber of Commerce lobbied commissioners to flip their vote on behalf of their client. They didn't register as lobbyists, but they, with OEV, set up meetings, me included, and came to our office and said, if you don't change your mind on this vote, we're not going to come to town. You know, later we found out that they had a big party at table 23 where city tax dollars were used to buy everybody expensive steak dinners and alcohol. That's why Blueprint OEV is out of control. That's what needs to come to an end. And because of that type of activity we're seeing and that type of wasteful spending, that's what the citizens are losing. They're losing high-speed internet to their communities. They're losing the ability to have public dollars serve the public good. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I want to thank the candidates for answering all of my questions. You've been great and really good with the time too. So thank you for that. So now we have come to that portion of our forum where we want to receive questions from the members of the audience. So each candidate will have a minute to respond. And so I will receive some instruction from my host as it relates to a question. So our first audience member with a question is Lackey Love. Make sure your hand is raised and you are unmuted when you ask your question. Lackey? Is she still here?
Yes, I just, I'm finding, I think I'm asking you to unmute, Lakey, if you can. Okay, there you go.
Sorry about that. So my question is in reference to an incident that happened last year in 2021. Chief of Police Lawrence Rebel not only attended but spoke as our Chief of Police on the stage at the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association and a well-known anti-LGBTQ organization. And the city didn't do anything about it. In fact, City Manager Reese Gode's response was quite offensive. So my question is, if you were in office, first, how did you feel about the situation? And if you were in office, how did you handle it? And if you weren't in office, how would you have handled the situation of the chief of police attending this conference? And then also, please talk about how you would work to protect LGBTQ plus people, especially Black and Brown LGBTQ plus people, against police harassment and brutality.
So
go ahead.
when you're in that kind of position, you've got to be aware that everything you do has repercussions. And if you're in that level of trust with the city, you can't risk losing that trust by talking to groups that take such a strong position against our neighbors. I think that I would have expected more actually out of city management. Apparently, Chief Rebel went and asked for permission to go to this event. There was plenty of time to say, oh, hey, no, we don't need that kind of image. So I wish they'd taken a stronger stand when he approached them and said, can I go to this? And said, no, that's not going to work well. You know, as far as what I'll do to protect LGBTQ, minorities, you name it, all I can say is all my life, from the time I was born and adopted, I've been raised by parents that taught me everybody deserves to be treated the same. When I was in the police academy, that was pounded into your head. When I worked at the police department, I would argue the police department has the most diverse group of any profession when it comes to LGBTQ. I would hold that statement up to almost anything. We all looked at each other like brothers and sisters, regardless of who you loved. As a doctor, it's been beaten into my head that everyone deserves to be treated the same. And one of my proudest moments, I'm known at Tallahassee Orthopedic Clinic as the guy that speaks up for the employees.
David.
When 2 female employees wanted to get married, one of my proudest moments was when they came to me and asked me to be the officiant for their marriage.
Okay, that's your time, David.
Oh, sorry.
All right. So, Commissioner Matlow, same question, 1 minute.
Sure. I mean, it answers the last question and the first question. The biggest thing we can do to keep our community safe and why that was such a disaster is replace the city manager. He's not an effective leader, and he can't rise to the occasion to provide the type of leadership we need in our community. I was appalled when I saw that video. Everyone has a right to religious expression, but you don't have the right to do it in a City of Tallahassee uniform. You don't have the right to do it representing the City of Tallahassee or the police department. You have to be able to separate your work life from your home life. And we didn't see that. And I think the real lost opportunity of all of that, what was just the lack of recognition that it was hurting people, right? Whether you thought it was okay to be there, which I didn't, but that was the position, but there wasn't even a recognition that being there was creating harmful feelings in our community. I attended the mayor's LGBTQ advisory panel with the chief, and I was the only elected official there. And okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, Dan Hendrickson is next. Please unmute, Dan. You have 1 minute to ask your question. Thank you.
We're all Democrats here, and boy, thinking of the election overall, what a year to be a Republican. Now, all candidates get support that are not Democrats, but what I want to ask you in the context of all the dark Republican money this year and the secret election political committees, the worst of the DeSantis regime, can you describe any recent conversations you're having with your Republican, hopefully moderate friends and supporters as to what they should do about breaking their party loyalty this year to oppose the policies and the candidates that are accompanying these giant steps towards autocracy and the creeping fascism?
I tell everybody I meet on either side that our nation is probably in a race for the middle. When you look at polls, the grand majority of folks want people that are moderate, in the middle, no extreme views, no extreme policies. And that's what I push for. Now, when I talk to friends that are Republicans who support folks that I consider extremists, I say, well, that's the problem. That's why we'll never have a nation that gets along. We've got to get back to electing reasonable people that are in the middle and stop letting our politics get driven by the 3 or 4% on either extreme of the party. And I make that clear to my friends that are Republicans that you won't find me towing the line behind people that have demonstrated obvious extremism.
Sure. I mean, I think if you want to support people in the middle, support Democrats. There's no middle ground on a woman's right to an abortion. There's no middle ground on the rights of trans people to go to school and not be identified or discriminated against. Some things you're not going to be able to find middle ground on. But I know big Republican money has put a target on me. They're coming after me very hard. I'm not sure we'll find much compromise with those folks. But as far as registered Republicans who maybe just vote from time to time, I think what really kind of unites us is this need to end corruption in government. It's at the city level, it's at the state level, and it creeps into the federal level as well. We all recognize the problems with corruption in government. It starts with campaign financing and the quid pro quo we see there. So if there's one thing we can connect with people on, it's getting big money out of politics.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, please put your questions in the comments and we will definitely try to get to them. We're doing really great on our time. Margaret Moore is next. Please unmute Margaret. Margaret, you have 1 minute to ask your question and we will have Commissioner Matlow answer first.
Hi. Is this thing on?
Yes, it is. We hear you.
Apologies. Thank you for hosting. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Dr. Bellamy. My question, I'm going to read fast. Take what you can. City commissioners also serve as the CRA board members. Recently, the city attorney opined that as board members, commissioners are not beholden to the same ethical standards. The same 3-2 block is there. John Daly is the current chair and proclaimed the downtown district would be his priority this year. Historically, the CRA has been a hub of grift. The indictments are still coming. There's murmuring of creating a further district, a new district, and yet Frenchtown still does not have a grocery store. What is your vision for our CRA? What would be your priorities? What ethics reforms would you embrace or not? So, broad CRA.
Sure, thanks. Try to hit all of them. I'm not going to support a North Monroe CRA that's just going to funnel money into landowners that don't need it. The downtown and Frenchtown Southside CRAs operate independently. We've made a lot of progress over the last few years in reeling back really the out of control student housing developments that were just getting free money to eliminate Black and brown communities on the South Side and in Frenchtown. And we were able to get a new CRA director that doesn't answer to the city manager. And that's given our neighborhoods a little more empowerment to fight for what they believe in. But largely, look, it's about investing in neighborhood infrastructure and the things that the neighborhoods need independently. We've recently seen requests from the city of Tallahassee asking the CRA to purchase signs and other things that they need. I'm not going to support any of that. The CRA money is meant for the neighborhoods, and their vision is how those dollars should be spent.
Okay, David?
The CRAs need to focus on getting money to people who need it, not people who are going to do a project, whether they get that extra money or not, and just look at it as another part of their black ledger. We need to focus on the businesses that truly need it to get started and to succeed. One way we can do that is start going at those businesses and approach them and say, you've been here a while, you're a small business, how can we help you? They have to have a business plan to get money from the CRA, and it's quite often hard to get that. There's a program at FAMU, I think it's run by a fellow named Keith Bowers, that helps small businesses draw up a business plan that they can, in this case, could use to take the CRA. As far as ethics, if your only reason for being on a board is because you are a city commissioner, that comes under the ethics committee. I don't understand why we're even arguing it. The question that the city attorney answered, it seemed, was more, can the city ethics committee oversee the behavior of county commissioners that were on Blueprint? And I don't even know why we were looking at that. Regardless of what the county does, the ethics board should have jurisdiction over the city commissioners that are on boards for no other reason than they're a city commissioner.
All right, thank you. Stephen Martin, you're up next. Again, 1 minute to ask your question. Please be mindful of your time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I hope you can hear me. During a public hearing at the March 23rd City Commission meeting, on behalf of his client and the applicant being PTI LLC or PT1, I'm not sure which it is, but the attorney lobbyist requested that Commissioner Matlow recuse himself because he was being challenged by you, Dr. Bellamy, someone who has ties with the applicant. And that, as the attorney said, he then felt that therefore Commissioner Matlow's vote on the item in front of the commission would be biased against the applicant because of your ties with the applicant and the fact that you were running against him. So, question for you, Dr. Bellamy, do you, in hindsight, believe that that request was appropriate? And for both candidates, should a sitting commissioner ever be asked to recuse him or herself when a challenger for that seat has ties to an item in front of the commission? And if so, under what conditions should that happen?
I'm sure there's times when it would be appropriate. I don't think Jeremy and I had enough interaction yet for me to really be worried about it. That was a decision made by our lawyer. I'm in a group of 25 people, and I told the group, you guys just need to do what y'all want to do. This lawyer doesn't represent me, he represents y'all, and I'm going to stay out of it. In that particular one, I didn't personally have a problem with Jeremy voting on it.
And I'll just follow up on that. I mean, it cuts both ways, right? I mean, if you're using your candidacy to try to get a vote passed for something that financially benefits you, it may be wise to just ask your attorney not to do that, right? I want to switch back to the CRA ethics reform because I agree with Dr. Bellamy. I proposed codifying having the CRA under the Independent Ethics Board, but that again was voted down by the majority. I'm finding a lot of agreement with Dr. Bellamy, and I'm just curious why maybe he didn't run for a different seat.
Okay, thank you. Claudia Sperber is next. Claudia, please go ahead and unmute and ask your question. When you're ready, you'll have 1 minute.
Okay, am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. My question goes back to the campaign donations that you both have received thus far to date. And when I do a quick review, and I was just checking to verify, when I go back to our supervisor of elections donation history, it's clear that the bulk of Dr. Bellamy's donations are coming from real estate developers and from large businesses. That's the primary bulk of his financial backing. And the primary bulk of Commissioner Matlow's backing is everyday voters. So I'm wondering if you could both comment on the differences of the primary everyday voters contributing mostly to Commissioner Matlow and the real estate developers and big business primarily supporting Dr. Bellamy.
Sure, I'll take that first. Why are they not donating to me? Because they feel like I'm not in their financial best interest, right? Real estate interests like Talcor are getting 6% off of no bid land deals that aren't even released for other realtors to bid on. And they're getting hundreds of thousands of dollars in return on that. I said, we shouldn't operate that way. We should bid this out and give everybody a fair chance. He's not supporting me. They have several companies that are dumping thousands of dollars into David Bellamy's campaign. It's the same thing with the developers. We've asked the developers to listen to Killarn, to listen to Summerbrook, to listen to Bond, listen to our neighborhoods before these developments come in and destroy our quality of life. They don't want to have those conversations. They think it slows them down. I'm proud that I'm not getting money from a bunch of companies that want to overthrow the will of the majority of people, because I'm supported by the majority of the people. Thousands of low-dollar individual contributions have been donated to my campaign because people believe in what we stand for. I believe in what our community stands for, and working together, we won in 2018, we won in 2020, and we're going to sweep the slate in 2022.
All right. Our next question comes from Facebook, Teresa Wells, and she asks Bellamy, which we will ask you to respond to the question first, but we also want to hear from you, Commissioner Matlow. Would you have run as a Republican instead of a Democrat if you thought you could win in a Democratic majority city?
I read a book on Colin Powell, and he was thinking of running for president. And one of his aides came to him and said, well, if you do it, Colin Powell's an independent. He said, do it as a Democrat. Your heart's too kind to be a Republican. And that's kind of stuck with me. I think I long for the days, again, of Bob Graham. I think Democrats have their heart in the right place. So I registered as a Democrat when I turned 18. I'm going to stay a Democrat, but I do long for the return of Leroy Collins and Bob Graham, Gwen Graham for that matter. As far as the campaign donations, nobody should be surprised those folks are giving to me. Jeremy called them criminals. He made a video saying he was coming to get them. We wouldn't be having this talk about financing if Jeremy and his campaign hadn't started getting money from out-of-state PACs. Almost all of my donations are locally. There's a tremendous amount of out-of-town donations. So nobody in this race can sit there and say that their donation list is pure as the driven snow.
Okay. Commissioner Matlow, same question.
Sorry, what was the question?
The question was, would you have run as a Republican?
That's right. Okay, I got it.
A Democrat if you thought you could win in a Democratic majority city?
Yeah, no, I won it because it's funny. I remember a guy coming up to me in an event and he said, I'm a hardcore Trump supporter and you're a social justice warrior, but I'm going to vote for you because I think you're honest. And one thing I'm proud of, no matter who you are, everybody knows what I stand for. Everybody knows that I'm going to tell you exactly what I think. You never have to worry about if I'm changing my position or hiding, my view on an issue because I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to let the votes speak what they may. So would I switch parties to try to deceive the community to be something I'm not? No, I couldn't do that.
Okay, thank you. So I think we have come to the end of our audience Q&A because we don't have any more questions in the chat and on Facebook or on Zoom. So we have one final question, short answer for each candidate. You'll have 1 minute to respond. What is the biggest challenge facing the city of Tallahassee? And if elected, what specific actions would you take to enact solutions during your term in office? Dr. Bellamy, if you'll respond first.
I think the biggest problem we face is poverty. Poverty leads to crime. Poverty leads to a lack of affordable housing. Poverty leads to bad education. It's poverty, poverty, poverty. In the long term, we've got to fix that. And I will do it by trying to work with responsible employers who will come to the city and not hurt our city and help give good careers to our citizens who live in 32304. In the short term, I will demand that we start providing services to our underserved areas the same way we provide them in the other areas of Tallahassee. It's not okay that you can drive down Saxon Street and find five boarded up houses and empty lots full of garbage. And I'm not talking about a bottle. I'm talking about bags of garbage where it has become the norm to have a dump in the middle of a neighborhood. The city wouldn't tolerate that in Killearn. We shouldn't tolerate it there. There shouldn't be any broken out light bulbs. There shouldn't be overgrown empty lots. I will demand on day one that we start delivering those services to our underserved areas.
All right, Commissioner Matlow.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's poverty and affordable housing. Once again, we find agreement on the issues that matter. But you know, what do we need to do? It starts with rearranging our budget. Our number one priority should be our number one budget priority, but our budget doesn't reflect that. And there's a lot of pushback on changing our budget. And you know, city staff is trying to shorten the length we can have conversations about our budget. You know, next week they moved a 4-hour budget workshop to one agenda item on the evening meeting. You know, there's a coordinated effort to try to stop us from using public dollars to benefit the public good. So we're going to end the giveaways to developers. We're going to end the giveaways that are being made in backroom deals, and we're going to put those dollars directly in the communities that need them. Thank you guys for hosting this event. Very much look forward to your support. Ask for your support on August 23rd.
All right. So I want to thank the candidates for their great participation. I want to thank you all, the audience, for attending. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This has been our third Democratic Candidate Forum, the third of 9 forums in our summer series. Forums will be held every Saturday through August 13th for our important local elections occurring during the primary election cycle. We hope to see you at each and every one. Thank you again. So long and best wishes.
Thanks,
Thanks a
Nicole.
lot.